Okay. Okay, so let's just for practice to start off with, if you take, let's just go with the vocabulary, and I'm just kind of curious to see what you can remember by way of vocabulary. So if you kind of cover up the definition, you don't want to participate?
Nope.
Okay. No, you should follow along in here. Okay. So,
All right then.
since
I wrote.
there we go.
Is I take.
Okay.
Amen. It's amen. Also, verily or truly, right?
Yes.
On a bino, I go up.
Mm-hmm.
Autas, aute, auta is he, she, it.
Yes.
De, but. Good job, guys.
But that's not and now. That's the
moo.
Yeah. That
Is that right? Moo? Men. Mende.
the men dab, but
Yeah.
but and or now. Sometimes you do translate it now, but it's instead of just but because it's the mild transition, the mild
that's what it's-
conjunction. Yeah.
Mild but. This is not the serious but. Doxazo is I glorify. Ego and hemais, it's I or me. No, I, is that right?
Yes.
I or we.
Yes.
I or we. I, me is me.
It's a verb, so it's I am.
I am.
Oh, yeah, okay. I am. I, me. I'm me.
I mean,
I am. Okay, SCO is I eat.
Mhm.
Idios. I just remember unique. So, idios, idion. It's unique,
That's
but
good.
what is it?
One's own.
One's own.
Thing.
Mine. Okay. Kago, contraction of kai and ego. And it's I go and also and I.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Chi-ego, yeah.
Holy Moses. Okay. Tata bino. Down. I go down.
Yes.
Men. This is what did we say the definition is of this?
seriously, what is this?
It a lot of times it goes untranslated. Sometimes we use it for emphasis to say indeed. So there'll be some sentence you're going to see a men in there, and you're going to see it attached to a word, and you're going to say he ran indeed, or this is true indeed, or something like that. I probably should have looked up a good example of it. I'll try to remember to do that for the next class, so we can see where that's used.
Ephesians 4:11.
In Ephesians 4:11, yeah, that's the men deck construction where it says, and I would translate that on the one hand, he gave the apostles, and then you have the des. On the other, he gave the prophets, and on the hand, the evangelists. On the other hand, the pastors, even teachers. Yeah, so that's a men des. So it's kind of a continuation where you're comparing and contrasting.
Which is how they're giving it to us here. So I'm assuming we'll learn other ways that men is used later. Bless.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm gonna say. Okay.
Okay. So oo is not. We will also see it as ook or ooks. Paulos, ha Paulos is Paul. Petros. I know that one. Peter. Su and humais is you and y'all. Ta technon, child.
Okay.
We want to do supplemental vocab too.
And No, I don't think we'll
When
have
it
to.
becomes mostly names, it's easier to remember.
Yeah, because you just have to pronounce them. Okay, so so as we already kind of said, when we have the our pronouns, the first person pronouns, aside from the nominative forms, ego and hey mice, the rest of the forms are all going to end with the traditional endings, roughly, in that way. So emu and amon, we have that, and then yeah.
So in the singular, it gives us emu and mu. And so what
Okay.
is the difference of
Mu is unemphatic. We're going to go over this today. And then emu, where it has the accent on it, then that is the emphatic form.
so we're putting emphasis on who?
Right,
Me.
right. And when you have the unemphatic form, and we're going to go over this today, then it also becomes enclitic, where it's joined, it's connected enough with the word before it that its accent, it drops its accent, which is why we don't have it there. It's unemphatic, and the accent is taken from the word that it's joined to.
Okay.
Okay, same thing's going to happen with the second person, and we have not learned yet. No, I'm not even going to go there. we'll just stick to this, and then we have then again our pronouns in the third person, autos, which we talked about the nature of that. Those endings are clearly, they're going to match the second declension masculine neuter endings and the first declension feminine endings. So if we learned those for the nouns, all we have to do is apply those then to autos in this way. Okay, so kind of moving on then in our textbook. So probably isn't too hard to figure out, but pronouns, Greek pronouns function pretty much like English pronouns. They're just taking the place of nouns. One of the things that's important is that you don't have a lot of I shouldn't say you don't have a lot, but you're not normally going to have a nominative pronoun as the subject of a verb, because the pronoun technically is built into the verb ending. If it does occur with the verb, then you're going to translate that. You're going to say gnoskai, he knows. But if you'd say autos gnoskai, you'd say he himself knows. Now you're adding, because the pronoun is added, the nominative pronoun, it is adding emphasis that it's included, because it doesn't have to be.
So we're just adding emphasis. It's the same thing. It's just.
Yeah, you're just, rather than translated it he knows, you're going to say he himself knows. Okay, which the textbook goes over that with us in here. Big fancy word that we need to learn if you're learning Greek is the word antecedent. We use it in English too, but antecedent simply is the noun to which the pronoun refers. And it's actually a fairly important word, because there's going to be a lot of different forms of pronouns through the course of Greek, and being able to identify what's the antecedent to that. And there's some areas of interpretation where trying to decide what the antecedent of that pronoun isn't always obvious, because when you apply all the rules for determining the antecedent, you're going to find places where you're going to have a couple things that are going to meet those qualifications, and you're going to have to try to make that decision, probably maybe a little bit more on interpretation and context, which you always should do, and not just the grammar. So anyway, I see the disciple and I teach him. Auton in that sentence then, that's the pronoun, obviously. Mathetain is the antecedent. So I'm just taking this stuff right out of the textbook. But
But you're reading your notes.
I'm going with my notes, not reading everything straight out of the textbook here, because my notes are obviously a little bit more abbreviated. But a pronoun has to agree with its antecedent in gender and in number. So which makes sense. If you're referring to a singular noun and you have a pronoun here and you put it in the plural, well, that doesn't make sense. Why is it I'd say, my wife, they? All of a sudden you're going, what? Your wife is singular. You'd say, my wife, she does this, or her. So that makes sense. Even in English, we do that. Gender also is important. So if you look in the sentence up there, auton is what gender?
No.
It could be neuter, but it's also masculine. They share the same auton.
Accusative.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Okay.
out. The accusative is the same in both the neuter and in the masculine. But it's auton, whereas we have mathetain, which looks like it has a feminine ending. But mathetain is not feminine.
It's a first declension, masculine.
It is. And the definite article is one of those things that also helps us remember that. So in that case, then it's matching then the gender. So it's going to take the right gender, despite what the ending on mathetain is, or the noun, the antecedent noun. However, the case may differ. In this case, the case agrees because they're both the direct object. I see the disciple and I teach him. Both cases, they're the direct object. But let's say I see the disciple and I write, let's say I say grapho epistolane, I write a letter, and then I would say auto, to him. I write a letter to him. Now I have to put that in the dative because I'm sending a letter to him. So I have to put him in the dative case. So the case depends on how its function or purpose in the sentence, not on what the noun is and that it's connected or its antecedent in the context. So, and we have an example of that with gnosko ekklesion, kaimeno, and aute. And so I know a church and I remain in it. So ekklesion in the first place is an accusative. It's the direct object of I know. But aute is locative in this case.
I don't, but your notes say it's instrumental, and I'm assuming you wrote it that way because that's what the book said.
I did write instrumental. I was going off that. I'm maybe inclined to think maybe as I'm just going back and looking at it, and I would be inclined to say I remain in it. I wonder why they went with instrumental.
Okay, where is
I need to find that in the textbook. I'm sorry.
So it's on this page. I don't know if it's the same here, but 41 on my digital one. That's where it starts.
So where are we here? It's
It's
in the second paragraph, right in the middle of the second paragraph towards the outside.
Oh, the book says locative. You probably just made a typo.
I clearly made a typo. And they do say locative right there. It's not accusative, but locative. Yeah, so I just totally blew that out.
But the reasoning that they give is that it's required by the preposition and.
Right. Which is not always true because the preposition and can also communicate by means of in context. In fact, there's quite a few places like that. So that's my mistake in copying my notes. Anyway, but aute then obviously should be locative. Okay, just anybody that's following along, this should be locative. If I can collect, there we go. So that should be locative, and it's locative because that's where you're remaining in. I remain in it. I remain in the church. Okay. Now, personal pronouns are used in the nominative case. Excuse me, we've already kind of talked about this when emphasis is desired. It's unnecessary because the pronoun is part of the verb. It's indicated in the verbal ending. So a good place, and I don't know if I pulled this one. I didn't pull this one out. Yeah, this is the one that they have. This is from John chapter 6, where Jesus says, I am the bread of life. So ego eimi, ha artos, tes zoes. And so I am the bread of life. And excuse me, my goodness. The I me, the verb, I me says I am. So you don't even need a pronoun with that. The pronoun is part of that verb. But by adding the ego, he's laying emphasis on it. In fact, it's the use of ego I me, that expression, ego I me in John is actually very significant. John has a lot of Jesus's ego I me statements. Some of them are absolute. Absolute means there is no predicate nominative. This one actually has a complement here. It says, I am the bread. But you have another one, and this is in John 6, but you have another one just before this in John 6, where the disciples are in the boat and they're trying to row into a headwind that's incredible. And Jesus comes walking on the water and says that they fear because they thought they were seeing a ghost. And Jesus simply says, I am, stop fearing.
So like you were saying before with the he himself knows or whatever,
Right.
if we were to translate it literally, would that be what we would say? I myself am.
Yeah, I on one of my Greek professor always says, I on my part, I am. That's the way he used to put it, which is really bulky English. But
I am my part.
I on my part,
on my
I am. That's the way he always kind of maybe a little bit older English way of stating something than we do. But we could say, I myself, I am. Maybe. But it's in that, by the way, that is when Jesus is saying that, that's a connection to his identity out of the Old Testament from Exodus 3, where God identified himself as the I am. That, by the way, demonstrates one other thing about that when we have I, me, and this is going to come up a little bit later when we get down into these verbs, but I, me never takes a direct object. And it has no voice. So it's never going to be active or passive. The to be verbs, I, me, I seen, I stin, estin, and so on and so forth, always are, for all practical purposes, just active, but we're not really saying they're active. They're just telling you, you exist, I exist. Now they take a complement, and here we have the complement in this case would be the bread. I am the bread. Sometimes we might say the bread I am, but that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So that's one of the reasons that we translate that as though it's a predicate complement. Everybody understands what a predicate complement is, right? Okay.
Remind me.
Okay. A direct object is as I throw what? I throw the ball. But I am, or he is, then you're going to say, what are they? What are they? What are they saying? Who are they? And so that's what we call the predicate complement. It's going to be, in Greek, it's going to be a nominative noun that's going to tell you what this person is that's being identified by the verb.
It's not in a preposition.
And it's not in a preposition. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So it's equals the linking, it's a linking verb.
There you go.
And subject equals.
The subject equals the predicate complement.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Exactly. Linking verb. And I don't know that this calls them linking verbs.
Yeah.
That's kind of an English term that we use. So, okay. The third person pronoun seldom occurs as a personal pronoun. If it is used in the attributive position, we often translate it the same. So we're going to have the same apostle. So we have ha autos apostolos, the same apostle. If it is in the predicate position, okay, that's when we translate itself. So the apostle himself is kind of what we were saying up there with I myself am the bread up above.
Or so okay. So, oh, that's in the book that it does that. You just didn't write them both out. I was going to say so we could also say ha apostolos ha autos, and that would be the same apostle as well.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So however, whatever way it occurs in the attributive position or in the predicate position, these are appropriate ways. The same apostle, the apostle himself. And I'm going to say that's the general rule. You're going to come across places where you look at the Greek and you can look at English translations, and it is not always going to reflect that. In fact, one of the things I've noticed with more modern translations is sometimes when that pronoun occurs in those places, they do not even translate it in some modern. And one of the reasons is because modern English grammar, since probably when I went through school, to say I myself did this, they call that a tautology, which is it's redundant. You don't need to say I myself. If I say I did it, that's all you need to say. You don't need to say I did it myself or I myself did this. That's the way they look at it. But in traditional English as well as in Greek, it's actually there for an emphasis. And I think somehow or another we need to try to represent that, if not directly in our translation, at least perhaps when we're teaching through it. So we even have an interesting example where we have autos, third person nominative pronoun here, that's used with an ego. So autos ego lego, which now, again, this is a real strong emphasis, because if we say ego lego, that could say I myself say, but now they've added the autos on front of that, and I really myself say. It's when you see that, there's a strong emphasis on saying.
Now I'm extra confused because I thought autos was he.
It is, but what I'm saying is autos, when this is what it's getting at, the third person pronoun up above, the third person pronoun seldom occurs as a personal pronoun. It usually is used to indicate sameness or self, even if it occurs with, in this case, the pronoun ego. So what they're doing is they're trying to show you're going to have passages, you're going to come along and you're going to have the nominative pronoun ego. You're going to have the nominative third person pronoun that you would translate he. Maybe if it's a woman, it would she. And you're going to say, now, which one of those is the subject? Well, they're both the subject, but one of them they're occurring for the sake of emphasis. And so they're trying to help you understand when you come across that, when you're reading that in your Greek text, that there's real strong emphasis put on, in this case, I myself. And maybe we don't always appreciate that in English, but you're going to have those passages where you're going to come across this and you're going to realize, oh, this was really important for me to understand that he's saying this is he himself. This. Don't confuse this in any way with anybody else. Okay.
I feel like I just need to see it in context more for it to.
Okay.
See.
I will let me write that down, and let me try to pull one up here when we're done today, and we'll also try to start off with one, but I just want to write that down.
Basically, they're just saying we can use that word to add emphasis.
Yes.
To me, to you, to him, to her, to it, whatever.
Exactly.
We just use it to add emphasis.
Exactly.
In the nominative.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, when we have a genitive case pronoun, in this case we have mu, and it's the unemphatic position, so it is unaccented. When it occurs like that, almost always is it indicating possession. So halagos mu would be my word, or one of my Greek professors was very emphatic that we always would translate the word of me. He always said, my word isn't technically accurate in communicating the Greek. But I just, to this day, I do my word. I very seldom say the word of me. Okay.
That doesn't even make sense to me.
Yeah, I know. I don't.
The word that comes from me.
And is that what that is saying? The word that comes from?
No, it's
That's
possession.
not-
It's expressing possession. So, and that's the way. And when I took Greek years ago, and I've taken Greek out of two different Greek grammars, Machen and the old version of Summers. That's the way they always translated. That's the way they translated the possessive pronoun, is of me, of him, of her, which is just, it's awkward English.
Mine is hers.
And so I would honestly have to say, if you translated something like that, most people would come to that and they would have no clue what you're talking about.
Right.
I think if you say, I myself do that, even though that's not the way people usually, and I disagree with that. I think people do speak like that more than we realize, even though modern grammarians are saying that's what?
Redundant.
Yeah, even though modern grammarians say it's not good.
Right. We might not write that way, but I think people do
Right.
speak that way.
Yeah. And so having said that, I would translate it my word, because I think that comes across, even if you're speaking to people and say the word of me, I think most people go, what did you say? I'm speaking 19th century English, early 20th century anyway. The full form of the pronoun often occurs following then a preposition. So we actually, instead of having mu, we have ex and mu rather than ek mu in this case.
The full form of the pronoun often occurs following a preposition.
So remember, the full form of the pronoun is going to be emu. Okay, that's the full form of the pronoun. Yeah, and so and because there's a because it, I'm just trying to get my brain wrapped around this, because this starts with
Vowel.
with a vowel. Thank you. Oh, man.
I don't know what he's trying
See,
to say.
and
Sorry.
you're always saying you can't learn this. I'm like, and I'm trying to teach it, and so I can't even wrap my head around this. Act, our preposition act, this changes down here to smooth the pronunciation. And so here we have the pronoun. This is going to be the emphatic form that's going to occur. We're not going to have ek, mu. You're not going to see this. This is the unemphatic form. It's the same thing. You're just dropping the epsilon.
You're not going to have
We
ekmu?
won't see that.
You're not going to see ekmu?
You know what? I will look that up. Let me write that down, and we
You
will look
just
that
said
up
it,
just to
so.
see
Okay.
if we have an exception to that rule. But what we're learning is that this is the way that we're going to actually find this. You're going to have the emphatic form, the normal form, rather than the unemphatic form.
After prepositions, the emphatic form of the personal pronouns are ordinarily used, is what the book says. So that would mean most of the time to me.
Right. So we will try to look up and see. I can pull this up on my computer real quick, and we'll take a look and see how many of the ekmu situations occur. Okay, with that, we're down to the verb, and so
With profs.
Power of the form of promises. Plus me. It's frequently. Because, of course.
Why not?
okay. So I want to know how you're doing. Do we want to tackle the present indicative of I, me, or do you just want to let that soak in at that point, and we'll pull up? Okay.
This might be a good place to ruminate.
Okay. Okay. Now, one of the things I would encourage you to do for practice on this, and I think the workbook actually says this, to review these. I would do the same thing you were doing with the first and second declensions. Just write them out. Practice writing them out. Fill maybe your assignment for next Tuesday before you even tackle the workbook on this. is just take some paper and fill five sheets of paper just going through the pronouns in their forms and just writing them out again, and then write out the English definition following it, and just keep repeating it over and over.
Okay, so let's talk for a second.
Yes.
So what I'm understanding here is that we use the emphatic form. This is only for first person. Yes, there's only an emphatic form for first person pronoun. Personal pronoun.
No, you can have emphatic.
So what would be the emphatic form of of Sue?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
oh,
Because it only
oh,
lists two forms for
no.
first person.
What you have with Sue is it's going to be, this is going to be your emphatic form. This is going to be your unemphatic form. There's
So there will be an
no,
accent
there's
or
no accent. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know what? And I this is what I'm going to say. And I have a beef with traditional Greek on this. My problem with that is if you go back and you read and you look at all the ancient manuscripts of Greek, they're almost completely unaccented.
There's not.
And it's that way for a few centuries. Accents were not generally added till later. And so this is why, and in fact, I think one of the Greek grammars I have, one of the beginning Greek grammars that I have upstairs, and I had to go back and look at the edition from early in the 1900s that I have, and then the current one that was released 10, 12 years ago, and the revision that them ended, they both say the same thing. Because in the New Testament, Greek really was not accented when they wrote this. They don't think that modern students should really fuss over learning accents, and they don't emphasize it a whole lot. And it's the one thing where I probably, one of the areas where I get myself into trouble with a lot of modern Greek guys, because they spend a lot of time making sure people accent stuff appropriately. And one of the things is we don't even know exactly how the accents functioned, because they think there was a fall with this, circumflex is a rise and a fall. Here there's a rise, so and they're like, and they don't know that. They don't know for sure.
Right. So it was just an attempt to have pronunciation be more congruent.
Yeah.
Or is it to make it, this is emphatic, this isn't, because they were seeing there is a difference. So we need to do something to make that clear. So let's
let's put it this way. I think what happens is you come to read that, and now when you're trying to teach it to somebody else that maybe is not a native Greek speaker and you're trying to train them in this, there's certain ways that, well, how do you train them to read that and to do that? And so you start adding these things. Same thing happened in Hebrew. Original Hebrew, if you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's unpointed. Unpointed is, there's no vowels in Hebrew. It's just radicals. And so you just have radicals there. And somewhere, long after the time of the church, you had Masoretes. That's what they were called. They were called the Masoretes. Jewish scholars that came along and they added these pointing based on the traditional reading of these texts. And I don't know. One of the things I try to do when I work on Hebrew, just as an example, is I try to read it without the pointing, without paying attention to the pointing, and see how close I come out. And I'd say most of the time, it comes out pretty good. And I think the same thing's going to happen in Greek if you don't pay attention to accents. I don't think you're going to have a lot of issues. Anyway, somebody will get upset with me over that. But
I'm sure there's lots of people out there on YouTube that are looking to scrutinize.
Yeah, well, we do not have. I can guarantee you, we don't have that many people. We don't have that many people that watch the class on YouTube here. So I'm not too worried about that overall. So I'm going to pull up. Let's share this screen. And where is my accordance? Okay, so in accordance, I want to see. Let's pull up. I'm going to make this bigger. Switch to my Greek text and words. So I want to see. Yes. Okay, so let's look at Romans 7:25 and see how these come out. And I'm going to compare these to, I'm going to do the old New American Standard. Okay, so Romans 7:25 is, most of your Bibles are going to have thanks. I would say, but grace is to God. That's the way I would handle it. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Then therefore, notice it says, I myself, oh, here's a menda construction. Okay. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth word in is the men. So that's the division. On the one hand, therefore, on the one hand, I myself. Is that the way are you following along with an English beside
I
that?
was
Or
actually looking at the Greek, but I
Yeah,
can look at
that's
the
good.
English. I myself with my mind is what it says.
Okay, see, so there's a place where they're using autos with ego, and it's emphatic. I myself, with my mind, I serve the law of God, and then we have the death. So there's the men death. So it should be on the one hand, I myself, with my mind, serve the law of God, but the death, on the other hand, with the flesh, it's an ellipsis. I serve law of sin.
So the men is being translated. So then,
Right.
I myself with my mind.
Actually, no. In the New American Standard here, it's on the one hand. So then is the ara un. Un is the particle therefore. So it's therefore.
At the Lexham English Bible.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. If you go down to Romans 9:3, you're going to have the same thing. Romans 9:3, gar, remember, is post-positive, so it's for, and then we haven't looked at this form, but this is I could wish.
How do you say that?
Eukamein, and it's from you. It's optative form of UK. UK is or you. It's a eukamai. I vow, or I wish.
What are you looking at?
This is Romans 9:3. Did you turn?
There?
How did you say that?
A yucaman.
A eukamine, and it's from eukamai. No, it's not optative. I was thinking that was, for some reason I was thinking that's optative. I was looking at it going, no, that's just a regular indicative. So doesn't seem right.
Or I could almost wish.
Oh, imperfect indicative. Yeah, I'm like, no, that's an imperfect. Yeah, I'm getting things mixed up in my head trying to translate this. So yeah, for I would wish I myself to be anathema or accursed. And autos ego, so I could wish for myself to be anathema from Christ on behalf of my brothers, my countrymen, according to the flesh. And so there's another autos ego, that situation that we have. So yeah, so and I came up just typing that in without looking at anything else fancy on that, just those two words together. I've got 4 times that occurs in the New Testament. 3 of them are in Romans, and all of them, they're all at least in the 95 edition of the New American Standard, they're all translated I myself.
So mine translates this, I could wish myself.
I could wish myself. Okay, so they are putting the myself in there.
Yeah, but I feel like the way that they translated this makes it different. So yours says I myself could wish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this says I could wish myself to be accursed.
Okay. So where is the
So the difference to me is if I myself could wish to be accursed, it just feels different. It feels like there's a different emphasis.
It's like you're saying, I wish this for myself,
Yeah.
rather than just saying I myself am wishing.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Let me,
Okay, so what, oh, because ESV for I could wish that I myself were accursed.
I'm gonna switch over to CSB here and see. CSB has I myself in
I kind
720.
of feel like we're getting off topic on this one. But
No, but this what we're this is interesting
it's what,
in
Romans 9:2 is what we're looking at.
Romans 9:3.
I could wish that I myself.
In the CSB, they have I myself in 725, but in Romans 9:3, they don't even represent it. They just said I could almost wish.
And this
Yeah.
Common English Bible says,
Yeah,
I wish I could.
And they have I myself in Romans 15:14. And it's interesting. In 2 Corinthians 12:13, they translated I personally did not burden you, rather than I myself. Is that the way that? Yeah, that's the way that I personally. That's interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna look at some. Okay, the other one that we were going to look at is to see how many times we have ek mu.
Okay.
Ekmu.
Not the,
And
Because what the book told us was that we should see it X and
and guess what? In the 28th edition of the new of the Greek New Testament, they have no occurrences of that.
no occurrences of ECMO.
And oops.
Book is right.
However, with the other where we have ex emu, it occurs 4 times, only 4 times. Which I would have thought there would have been more.
It's not said very often.
No. So, yeah.
Which is XMU is that's from me.
Yeah. Now I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch here. Nope. I'm going to switch over to ECMU, and I'm going to switch my text. Let's see. Let's try the ecumenical patriarchal text. See if anything comes up. Nothing in that one. And family 35. Nothing in that. So, well, let's just, for the fun of it, let's just try the TR. No, so the 4 different Greek texts that I have, I didn't look at the Westcott and Horace, I have a 5th one too, but none of them have ekmu listed in any of those. So, in that form. So, yeah. So what they're telling you there works. And the other one with autos ego, yeah, we have 4 examples of that. However, we had at least one example where they translated it in a way that gives it, in my opinion, a very different sense, doesn't it? Okay.
But I have a problem with words. So.
Okay.
Is that fair? I don't know.
So there we go. We'll be back on. So like I said, go back and work on writing all those out over the next few days. Practice those and see how that goes. And we'll end this. Let's stop.